Good afternoon. I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News Now, coming to you from our digital studios. We're going to be taking you to the sentencing in kind of a cruel case. And take you live inside the courtroom right there at the table. That is the defendant, Alvaro Torres. He is accused of ditching his dog. This is his mugshot. This was in December 4th of 2018, and that is Lucy. Lucy was found days after she was ditched in the woods near Willoughby. It was off of the St. Clair extension east of Erie Road. The dog was found after it had been outside in freezing temperatures for a couple of days. I did the research. I looked up the temperature that day. The high on December 4th of last year was 34 degrees. The low was around 28 degrees. As we take a look back now live in the courtroom, there is Torres. He has pleaded guilty already to one count of cruelty to companion animals for dumping that dog in the woods, for dumping Lucy in the woods. All through this entire process, we have seen protesters as we get the all rise. We've seen protesters all the way through Torres's pretrial hearings. The judge is in now again to sentence Torres, pleaded guilty to one count of cruelty to companion animals for dumping Lucy this past December. Let's take you into the courtroom.
Heather Torres.
And it looks like they're also going to be maybe doing the sentencing for his it looks to be his wife, Heather Pica Torres, as well.
All right, we are on the record. Good afternoon. We are here on 19 CRB 00792. The defendant, Heather Torres, is present with counsel, Attorney Huperts. I have Chief Probation Officer Tompkins present, and I also have the prosecutor for the city of Willoughby present. We're set for sentencing today. I'm going to start with Mr. Tompkins.
Judge, on August 1st, the defendant pled guilty to attempted cruelty to a companion animal, misdemeanor of a second degree. At that time, a pre-sentence report was ordered. That report has been completed. Defendant's attorneys had the opportunity to view the report and recommendation, and as you stated before, we are here for sentencing today.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Marco? Yes. Do you have my yellow pen? Yeah. Oh, it's not. Thank you. All right, Ms. Fellows, did you need to say anything
I don't
this
need to
time?
say anything. You have the pictures after.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Mr. Perez, anything on behalf of the city of Willoughby Hills, or Willoughby, excuse me?
Correct.
Anything that you want to say at this time?
Judge, we had discussed this case. She entered a plea. Her husband entered a plea. I'm leaving it up to the court for disposition in this case. That was the agreement I had with the parties. And so I'm sure the court will handle this like the court usually does, appropriately and fairly.
Okay, thank you. I just want to ask as to the restitution, there was a recommendation here. Is restitution, is that correct, $1,390 to the Lake County Dog Shelter?
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Huperts, on behalf of your client.
Your Honor, thank you. May it please the court, Mr. Perez, prosecutor. Your Honor, I stand here this afternoon with Heather Pica. Heather is a 37-year-old married woman. Her husband, Alvaro, is a co-defendant in this matter. There has been submitted reports and pictures and the entire background and history I think the court has through the pre-sentence report and investigation. I would like to go over some facts so that maybe the court is unaware. Heather is married since 2009 to Alvaro. They have 4 children together. Heather has an older son. Alvaro has an older child. They live in rent in Willoughby. They live on River Bend Road. They have been there for over 10 years. They have been pet owners for over 10 years. Heather had a dog named Mia. Alvaro brought this dog, Bianca, now known as Lucy, as you may be aware, brought that dog home. And the family maintained those dogs in in the garage. I wouldn't categorize them as in-house pets, but they were garage outdoor pets. They were pit bull mix. Per their lease, they were not allowed to have pets within the house, yet they did in fact have family pets. They did in fact have these dogs. Approximately 3 years ago, Bianca, now known as Lucy, the dog of this case, bit and killed Mia, which was primarily Heather's dog. Probably from that point on, there was disinterest, if you will, in Heather regarding this dog. Alvaro, it was his dog. They took care of it, they fed it, they maintained it. Ultimately, the dog suffered some health conditions, and I think the pictures reflected, you've probably seen. The dog had some skin condition from running around outside and in the prickers and bushes. The dog had what was identified as a tumor on its neck. I'm not sure the exact veterinarian diagnosis. The family had treated the dog until they just really couldn't treat the dog. On this particular night in question, Your Honor, this was a desperate situation. And I use the word desperation. I don't stand here today and Heather doesn't ask me to say she didn't make a mistake. That's why she's like guilty. That's why she's sorry. That's why we're trying to explain the background. This particular dog, Bianca, became very unruly. It did live in the garage, was not allowed in the house. And on this particular evening, the disciplinary problems with the dog, I guess, reached the last level and probably graded on the last nerve of Alvaro. The dog literally showed its teeth and moved towards Alvaro. He said, "That's it." He got the dog's cage and the dog's blanket and proceeded to put the dog in the back of the truck. Heather did come along with Alvaro. She has expressed to me that she thought they were taking the dog somewhere other than to just set it out in the woods. Prior to that, Heather had inquired, what do I do with this dog? How can I even get rid of this dog? She learned that it may not be a pretty ending for, as they call it, the dog Bianca. She had learned that if she turned it over, if nobody accepted the dog, it may be put to sleep. They were not intending to kill the dog, Your Honor. But did they exercise poor judgment in taking it out on December 4th? Albeit it's December. They took the dog out with a blanket, with an open cage, and they set it in the woods. Heather did go along with her husband. Heather did not say, let's not do this. And for that, she has expressed to me and asked me to express to you her apologies and sincere fault for participating. She has said, Larry, I expressed extremely poor judgment, but I thought the dog would be found soon, would be provided whatever attention it needed, and or whatever happened to it. She did not believe it in her conscience that she had this dog put away. The cage was not buried somewhere deep in the woods. There was a blanket. The dog was familiar with being outside. They left. A few days later, they were identified as the owners, and this case proceeded from that point. I would like to say that Heather, Your Honor, is a high school graduate, has had some further educational, academic follow-up, no subsequent degrees. She does, in fact, work full-time. She takes care of her husband and her total of 6 children. They have maintained a good, happy home and relationship. They have a good family. They have been good parents to their children. She has a good job, as well as her husband. They were good pet owners. This was a horrible lack of judgment, and nobody's disputing that. I don't think Heather would ever try to dispute that. We are here today, Your Honor, to say we're sorry, but we feel that if there is a blessing, if there is a light that came out of this case, is that the dog was in fact recovered very quickly, was taken into protective care, received medical attention, and from what we understand, has healed beautifully, has a new loving family, and is thriving in its new home and environment. That is the blessing, if anything, that came out of this, Your Honor. They didn't maliciously say, let's go harm this dog, or let's go do something worse to the dog. Yes, they did place it. They exercised bad judgment. Was it a malicious intent to harm the dog? I think it was poor judgment in how to dispose of the dog, because at least Heather wasn't aware of other options, and she really didn't know that Alvaro was just going to take it and drop it that night. We asked the court to look at, in fashioning a punishment, a penalty. I don't mean to diminish your knowledge of the purposes of punishment and of sentencing, but I can tell you that Heather and her family has experienced being ostracized in the community. They've been to downtown Willoughby and refused service. They've received prank calls. Their children's previous friends are shunning them. It has not been pleasant because of this one-time lack of good judgment. We can say wholeheartedly she sincerely is sorry. We can say wholeheartedly that this will never happen again. We will say wholeheartedly that she, Alvaro, and the entire family has learned a tremendous lesson from this. The punishment, Your Honor, there has been punishment meted out to date throughout this entire process. I don't know if further punishment is warranted, but she certainly understands and appreciates that she is willing and ready to do anything that the court thinks she needs to help with the animal society, or she's shown her contrition and she's been punished for it publicly. We ask the court to take into consideration that it's not going to happen again. This has certainly been the biggest deterrent to this thing, and we ask the court for its kind consideration.
Okay, thank you. Does she want to come up
Yes.
now?
I think the dog warden will say something.
Okay. Good afternoon. Would you state your name, please?
Deputy Commissioner Kim Restaurant.
Okay, hi. What would you like me to know?
I have taken care of the dog the whole time she was at show. I'm the one that picked the dog up.
Okay.
It was horrible to see her living in the woods. I don't care what it was 5 hours and 10 hours. It was 17 degrees when I got this dog. 17. The night I picked her up, the day I picked her up. It took me 2 days to pick her because she was so afraid. The lump on the side of her neck was from, they threw her out, and it was the thicket that got into her neck that got so upset, abscess. That's why it got so big. It was removed by a simple surgery. The dog never was aggressive. I picked her up, took her to the vet. I was a stranger to this dog. She never growled at me. She never licked her lip at me. She looked at me pitiful when I took her to the vet. I was there for 2 hours. We did a quick overhaul on her, took her back to our shelter, gave her a bath. I'm a stranger. She never did one thing to me. Gave her a bath, cleaned her up because she had urine stains, blood from under her neck because it was dripping like it was. Fed her, gave her a blanket to lay on. Never had one problem with this dog, not one. We let her socialize with other dogs. She had surgery. They fell in love with her at the clinic with other dogs. Never had a problem with her. The whole time she was there recovering, one of the clinic people actually adopted her, who has a pit bull. Never had a problem with the dog, ever had a problem with the dog. So if she had killed the Yorkie to start off with, as you're saying that she did, and threw her in the garage, why would you put a pit bull in a garage that has no hair to start off with? Sickly, number 2. She was older dog, number 3. They didn't want the dog. There's other things that they could have done with her. They did dump her on the side of the street, dead-end street. That much traffic does not go up and down. It's a wonder she was saved and not froze to death out there in the woods. You could see the pictures of where I picked her up from. There was, no, she wasn't in a canyon. She wasn't down a ravine. She was on the side of the street, dead-end street, in the middle of winter. Unacceptable. And this dog, I've known her since the day I picked her up. Never had a problem with her. It was horrible she looked like that. 15 years I've done this, and I've never done this to for a dog, ever. The condition the dog was in, it was horrible.
All right, it's okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Your Honor, if I might add, at least my recollection from reading the vet's report post-treatment, they said the dog's temperature when they did recover was was normal for the dog's temperature, so I don't know that we're alleging or they're alleging that the dog had frozen or suffered. I just wanted to point that out.
Do you know what time the dog was picked up by the dog warden? What time did you pick her up?
It was, I had went out the day before to get her, I went out the day before to get her, I was unable to catch her, so I set a trap along with next to her blanket and so forth. I went back out in the morning, it was early morning, 8:30, 9 o'clock before, when I got the dog.
Okay. So how long was the dog outside? Approximately.
I was told by the police department, you can look in the records, they tried to catch the dog 2 days before they contacted us.
Right, when they contacted you, you already had the dog, correct?
No, when they originally tried to catch the dog before they involved us.
Yes.
They were unable to catch the dog. Then on the third day, they contacted us, and then I got her the following morning. So she was out there
Okay.
3 to 4 days before we were able to get a hold of her.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Huberts, is there anything else that you would like to say?
Other than, again, reiterating the true sorrow that Heather has expressed to me, and I hope I'm adequately expressing to you, and the further fact that she is grateful that the dog was in fact found and has now been taken in and found a good home.
All right, thank you. Ms. Torres, Mrs. Torres, the law allows you to say whatever you want me to consider before I sentence you. What do you want to say on your own behalf?
I had Mia. I rescued Mia, the dog that Blanca killed. I rescued her when my oldest son, was 6 years old. I had Mia as a family pet, and then Blanca came into the picture. Both of our dogs lived together. They had fought on occasion, and I never knew that Blanca would actually kill Mia. Mia is a pit bull also. She was a pit bull also. They were both females. I don't know the house she's living in now, if it's a male-female, but they always fought if food was out. We didn't leave food out that day. We went to go to our family reunion, and when we came home, my middle son, found her in the garage. He opened up the door to let her out, and it was like a massacre all over the garage because Blanca had bit Mia under the arm, and she bled out all over the garage. And it was not a Yorkie. It was another pit bull that she killed, not a small dog. Did we conduct ourselves properly? Looking back, absolutely not. After Blanca killed Mia, we called the animal shelter to find out if we took her to the animal shelter, if she would be adopted out or put down because she was a pit bull. They told us no, they won't adopt her out because she's a pit bull. So we didn't take her. We kept her for years after that. And then my husband got to the point where he was just beyond frustrated with her and couldn't do it anymore. So when I got in the car, I thought that what we were doing was just going to take her to the shelter to put her down. I didn't have a conversation with him in the car about where we were going, but I did go along for the ride. And for that, and not guiding him correctly, I'm very sorry.
But you knew when you let the dog out of the car what was happening, right?
I agree, yes, I understand.
Right. Someone set up a blanket and a cage outside, and then you were there, whether he let the dog go or you let the dog go, you were part of that. At that point in time, you knew what was happening.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. All right. Is there anything else that you want to say?
My husband and I were good parents to our 5 kids that live in our house. My kids are great, but we have been publicly humiliated in this to the point that I don't even want to go out of my house. Everywhere I go, everybody knows my face, and I get ridiculed, I get approached, I've been flicked off, I've been refused service. It's unfair. I made a mistake, yes I did. But looking at the whole picture, I wish that people were more understanding and give us mercy on this because it's just an unfortunate circumstance. It's a poor choice. It is. I wish I could take it all back. I wish that I could have conducted myself differently in that moment. And for that, I'm truly sorry to the community. And I don't know what else to say to make it better, to make it right. I'm just truly sorry.
Okay, thank you. Anything else I need to know? All right, I have considered the statements here in open court, the nature and circumstances of the plea bargain that was entered here in this case, and all of the information that was contained in the pre-sentence report. I've also considered the there's been emails, letters, photographs from various people throughout the community, different advocates, and I've considered all of the information that was sent to the court and presented to me to consider at the time of sentencing. Considered statements from counsel, defense counsel here, and Mrs. Torres's own statements. And I do want to point out in the pre-sentence report that there is no criminal history here, that this is a first-time offense, and that Mrs. Torres has led a law-abiding life up until this particular case. And that is important in the eyes of the law. I'm required to consider that and decide what weight that gives in terms of sentencing here. So I've considered that, as well as the facts and circumstances surrounding this particular case, all in light of the purposes and principles of sentencing, and I have balanced the factors that I'm required to under the law. This is a misdemeanor of the second degree. So I've considered this, and the sentence of this court will be as follows. There will be a $150 fine. I'm ordering you to pay court costs. You'll be placed on probation for a period of 12 months. 90 days in jail is all suspended. You'll serve 40 hours of community work service. I'm ordering restitution in the amount of $1,390 to the Lake County Dog Shelter, and you are not to own any companion animals. Mr. Tompkins? Did I miss anything?
No, ma'am.
All right. Mr. Huberts, do you have any questions? Mrs. Torres, do you have any questions?
Am I not allowed to have any animals again, period, or?
As long as you are on probation to this court, you're not to own a companion animal. Okay?
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions? I have to advise you, if you violate your probation in any way, I can extend it, impose additional sanctions upon you, or I could just order all of the jail time. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Dan DeRose with 19 News Now. So there you have it. She gets probation for a year, 90-day suspended sentence. She will not spend any time in jail. 40 hours community service, a restitution payment of $1,300, nearly $1,400 to the Lake County Dog Shelter. This will be one of those rare cases where a husband and wife are sentenced in the same hearing. We expect now Alvaro Torres to come up to the stand. Right there, you're looking at a lot of the protesters that we've seen.
Alvaro Torres.
And now it'll be time for the husband. We heard the wife say she had no idea when they loaded the dog in the car that they were headed to dump it. She thought they were taking it to a shelter. So now let's hear what her husband has to say and if he gets the same punishment.
We are on the record, 19 CRB 787. I have Alvaro Torres present with Attorney Kraus. I also have Prosecutor Perez Chief Probation Officer Tompkins, and I have victim advocate present. I'll start with Mr. Tompkins.
Judge, on August 1st of this year, the defendant pled guilty to cruelty towards companion animals, misdemeanor of the first degree. On that day, a pre-sentence report was ordered. That report has been completed. The defendant's attorney has had an opportunity to view the report and recommendations, and we are here for the purposes of sentencing.
Keep in mind that this is a more serious charge. The other was an attempted cruelty. He has pleaded guilty to cruelty.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Perez, anything you want to add?
No, Your Honor, we are leaving sentencing up to the court. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Kraus.
Thank you, Your Honor. Alan Kraus on behalf of Alvaro Torres. Your Honor, you've already received a lot of information regarding this case. I don't want to go over the same ground. I don't want to trivialize the bad decisions that were made by Alvaro and his wife. They're serious. There is good news. Blanca, now known as Lucy, was quickly recovered. There's nothing in the record, and I read the report of the veterinarian who took care of Blanca. Her exposure to the outdoors did not cause her any type of damage that was reported in his report. I think you should know that. I'm not saying this is a good idea. I just think you should know the charge is based on leaving Blanca out exposed at that time of year. And she was an outdoor dog. The other conditions that she suffered from were treated by the veterinarian, the vet who took care of Blanca, and she had a good recovery. That's all very good. I can't help but say there's a certain irony in this type of case. And again, we know the decisions that were made were poorly made. But under Ohio law and under the law of many states, the Torres could have taken this dog to the vet and say, listen, we can't afford the treatment that she needs. She's a problem. We would like you to put her down, put her to sleep. And that would not be illegal. They could have ended this dog's life. That would have been the end of the story. But they didn't choose to do that. They didn't do it. So I'm glad that the dog is thriving under new conditions, and that's a good thing. You got to ask yourself, who leaves a dog outside with a cage and a blanket in an area where they're going to be quickly found, which happened here? I think it goes to this. I think it goes to the fact that bad decision, but not malice. They were not looking to have this dog harmed. They were hoping that this dog would have a better life. So you've heard from Ms. Torres how her and her husband have been punished in this case. And they have been ostracized. You know the type of response that has been put forth as a result of this case. I think the worst part in talking to Alvaro, not only he understands being ridiculed and he doesn't like it or harassed, but he has broad shoulders and he will take that responsibility. But it's extended to his children, that they have suffered because of his conduct. And I think that is perhaps the worst thing that could happen to Alvaro and his wife. They have been ridiculed at school. Their friends, some of them, turned their backs on them. So I know this is probably the most hurtful thing that's happened to this family, regardless of what this court decides. So there were bad decisions made, but I wanted to talk a little bit about Alvaro because I've gotten to know him throughout this case. We don't know each other. And there is a lot of interest in cases involving cruelty to animals, and we get a great outpouring from people. You know, it's interesting. I've been doing this a long time, and I've had horrific cases involving children, older people, people who are vulnerable members of society that don't get the type of reaction that a dog case would get. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying it's kind of interesting. And Alvaro, he doesn't come from a great background. And you have that information in the pre-sentence report. And he has been in trouble. The last time he was in trouble was probably a decade ago. But he did something. And listen, I'm not bringing up his childhood, how terrible it was, and all those things for pity or anything of that nature. That's not my point at all. I want you to understand that Alvaro didn't use it as an excuse to continue that lifestyle. And you can see at some point, this man made a decision. He made a decision that he was going to live a life where he's contributing to society, that he was going to go the right way. Not like a lot of his friends. And we sat and talked. Where are your friends today? They're dead or they're in jail from that time in his life. That's what happened. And he chose to go another way. And when he made that choice, good things started to happen for him. He met his wife, Heather. You've seen Heather. And he really admits that was probably one of the best decisions he ever made, was marrying his wife. And he works. In fact, in the report, you'll see that he works as he's self-employed, but he also does extended period of work for certain companies. And one gentleman that he works for, his name Michael Alfieri, and Mike would be here today, but he could not. But I do have a letter for the court.
Okay.
So you can see that he's the type of person who has really committed himself to living a lawful life, that he has gained the trust of people because he works hard and he understands the value of that hard work. So he's like, in many ways, a success story that I don't always get in my line of work. He made a bad mistake here. So it's important that both Alvaro and Heather are able to continue to work to provide for their family. He's determined, no matter what happens, that he's going to continue to succeed in taking care of his family, his children, and being the good citizen that he is. It is also interesting. We talk about punishment. I don't know if you happen to see, there was an article on Cleveland.com and Plain Dealer about 3 weeks ago, almost a month ago, I guess. And they're kind of doing a survey of other cruelty animal cases involving cats and dogs. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't.
Well, it's interesting. It's all over the place. It's really all over the place. There have been cases that you go, oh my gosh, this is horrific, where just here in Painesville, a man threw a dog out of a 6th floor window and killed the dog. That's a felony. He got jail time for that. You can understand that. Then we have cases where dogs were starved and abused, and that individual got probation. It's just very hard to get a read on these cases as to what, because that's what we do, right? We see, well, how are the judges looking at it? But I think when it comes to this court, my impression of you is that you consider what's in front of you when you come to your own decision. And I think that what has to happen, we should consider all that's put before us. But if that's all that was driving us, the outrage of the community or the pity of an individual, I don't think we're doing our job. We got to look at the whole picture. So, Your Honor, I hope that when you decide what's appropriate for Alvaro, will take into account what he has done with his life in the last decade, the success that he has had, with the family that he is raising with his wife and supporting, and that you will craft a penalty that will fit this particular crime where the dog has not suffered from this particular act and is doing well. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Torres, the law allows you to say whatever you want me to consider before I sentence you. What do you want me to know?
First, I want to apologize to the courts and to the animal lovers. The what I did, I accept full responsibility. I messed up. It was, I regret it. If I could take it back, I would. And just that I'm really sorry about what I did. Pretty much, right?
All right, well, Mr. Kraus is right. I do have to, I do look at the individual facts and circumstances of every case that comes before me. But I'm also required to, under the law, I think, to look at other similarly situated defendants. I didn't read the Cleveland.com article, but I did legal research to understand what are penalties that have been imposed for other similar offenses. And I do that in a lot of different cases, depending on what is in front of me. And I did that here. The issue that you have, Mr. Torres, is that your bad decision today is different than Mrs. Torres's bad decision, because Mrs. Torres has led a law-abiding life up until this incident, and that worked in her favor. I can give her the benefit of the doubt that it was a terrible judgment call, what she did. Your situation is different. When I review the pre-sentence report, I have to consider the prior criminal history here. And that weighs more heavily in this case, in these facts with respect to your sentence. I do take issue with some of what Mr. Kraus said in his statements here, because you didn't take the dog to the end of the street to give it a better life. I mean, you were letting the dog go. And there are, as you know, there's a million other ways that this could have been dealt with, right or wrong. Taking it to a doctor, if that was the decision that you had made. There's other ways that it should have been dealt with. Not leaving her outside for that length of time, unattended. I saw the photos. I mean, she was not in good health, and it was freezing cold. And so you just don't get the benefit of making a really bad decision without a more severe consequence for that. So with that being said, I reviewed the pre-sentence report. Oh, and I did want to note, I read the letter from your employer. And again, with respect to Mrs. Torres, I agree that the last 10 years of your life, you've led a law-abiding life. There have been no issues. And maybe that is attributed to the life that you have built together. And but the law requires me to look at everything. So I've considered all of the statements here in open court, including the detail in the pre-sentence report. Dating back to 1997, the criminal history includes a prior conviction for disorderly conduct by intoxication. In 2000, attempted corruption of a minor, a felony of the 5th degree. There's also a probation violation in that case. In 2002, there was an F4 CCW charge. You were sentenced to 6 months in prison. In 2004, there was another case, burglary, a felony of the 4th degree, and a domestic violence charge, and you were sent to prison on that case also. And then in 2010, there was a citation issued from this court for failure to confine a dog, a minor misdemeanor offense. Now we have the instant offense. So I've considered all of this, the recommendation from the probation department, statements from the prosecutor, all the statements made here today in open court, all in light of the purposes and principles of sentencing. I've balanced the factors I'm required to under the law. The sentence will be as follows. There'll be a $150 fine. I'm ordering you to pay court costs. She say the dog was left outside for 4 days.
She wasn't contacted till the third day, and it took her 2 days to get it.
180 days in the Lake County Jail with 176 suspended. You served 4 days in the Lake County Jail, one for every day she was left out there. I'm ordering restitution in the amount of $1,390, placing you on probation for a period of 12 months, and I'm also ordering you not to own any companion animals. Mr. Kraus.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think you've covered everything.
Mr. Torres, do you have any questions?
No, Your Honor.
I have to advise you, if you violate your probation in any way, I can extend it, impose additional sanctions, or just order all of the remaining jail time, which is 176 days. Do you understand?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, good luck to you.
Your Honor, I have one quick
Yes.
question. Does
Yes.
Mr. Torres go to the probation department to coordinate when he's serving his 4 days? When does he begin his 4 days?
Well, today,
You want him to be remanded today?
today, he'll be done Sunday, so you can go to work. All right?
Understand. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, Monday. All right?
Dan DeRosa with 19 News, just going to wrap this up. Mr. Torres probably had no idea that he was going to be headed to jail at the end of this proceeding, so he is probably a little struck there by what has just happened. He's being taken out of the courtroom. The judge sentenced him to 180 days, but then went ahead and suspended 176 of those days. The dog was left outside for approximately 4 days, so the judge said, you're going to serve 4 days in jail. That, again, probably came as a shock as well. His wife there is about to leave the courtroom. There were a number of the protesters. You heard that this family has really kind of been put through some public torment. There have been protesters every step of the way at all of the hearings for both Heather and Alvaro Torres. So this has been an interesting proceeding here. We don't often see a husband and a wife sentenced at the same time, and then we don't often see one of them let go to walk out of the courtroom, the other sent to jail for 4 days. We have one of our reporters is there in the courtroom. I'm keeping my eye on the court here. Our camera is going to start to move, but if they should head out into the hallway there and pick up some interviews. I'm seeing the camera move now, so I'm going to stick with this for just a little bit. If you're just joining us, this was the sentencing for the ditching of Blanco, but also named Lucy, this pit mix. That tumor that you see on the dog's cheek had to be removed shortly after it was found, but that was what the family was saying, is that they couldn't afford the medical treatments that Lucy would need, and that there had been a fight with another dog that she had killed, and that the husband just couldn't take it anymore. You heard the wife testify in court saying when they got in the car, she thought that they were taking the dog to the shelter to have the dog put down. She didn't know that they were actually heading to in Willoughby. It's off the St. Clair extension. It was a dead-end road, and they just ditched the dog. They did leave some semblance of a cage and an old dog pillow there, but the dog was on the loose for 4 days. You heard the animal warden say it was 2 days. The police tried to catch Lucy. On the third day, they contacted the dog warden. She went out and tried to capture the dog and was only able to do so after about a day. We're going to wrap this up. We have much more coverage coming up on our news in about an hour and a half on Channel 19. Want to remind you, this is how 19 News Now works. When we have hearings, when we have breaking news, we bring it to you on all of our digital platforms so that you can see it as it unfolds. I'm Dan DeRosa with 19 News Now. I want to thank you for watching.